Bear Talk is produced by the Golden Bear Gazette, Mount Juliet High School student newspaper. Welcome back to Bear Talk. I'm your host, Will Blackmon, and today I'm going to be taking you through the end of March Madness, and then I'll hand you off to Mr. Judkins for announcements. First of all, I'm excited to be back and to talk about something that I love, which is March Madness. And if you missed it, UConn beat Purdue on Monday to win the national championship. They won 75-60 over Purdue. Tristan Newton was named Most Outstanding Player. He scored 20 points, had 7 assists, and 5 rebounds in that game. And if you remember what I said from last episode, he was named to the first team All-American. So it's only fitting that he be the Most Outstanding Player in this game. Although championship night is great, there's a lot of things that went into them getting to this point. And there's a lot of things that happened that you might have missed that happened throughout of all of March Madness. So that's what I'm moving into right here. Let's look at the greatest moments of March Madness this year. First off, I want to start off with number 14 seeded Oakland beating Kentucky in the first round. They beat them 80-76 with a huge help from Jack Golke. He had 10 threes in that game. I was almost at NCAA record, and I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, wow, is Kentucky really about to lose? And then and he wasn't the only player getting buckets for Oakland. Trey Townsend was balling out as well. He scored 30 in that second round matchup against NC State. You usually see 12 seeds, 11 seeds beating teams in the first round with the upsets, but never really a 14 seed. And the fact that they went to overtime in the second round with NC State and almost beat them, just what a story for them and what a story for Greg Kampe, who's been a coach at Oakland for 40 years, and you finally make the March Madness tournament, and then you win against a world-renowned organization of Kentucky. So just that really blew my mind there. I want to talk about the Duke Blue Devils and one player in particular. That player is Jared McCain in his game against James Madison. He hit 8 threes and scored 30, sandwiching himself in between Kyrie Irving and Zion Williamson as freshman records for Duke players to score in a game. Kyrie Irving had 28. He was the eventual number 1 overall pick in the draft. Zion Williamson had 32 in a March Madness game. He was the eventual number 1 pick in the NBA draft. So I don't think he'll declare, but he has a bright future at Duke. He also scored 32 in the Elite Eight game against NC State. So he's really got a bright future there. Moving on up to Oregon, Jermaine Couisnard. He scored 40 points in that first round matchup against South Carolina to boost them to victory. They were an 11 seed and upset the number 6 seed South Carolina. Just watching him move, just watching him score, hitting buckets left and right, it just really blew me away. And then the next round, he goes and scores 32 points, and they did lose to Creighton in the second round, but what a run for him. He was only averaging just above 16 points a game, and then to go out and score 40, that's an amazing way to make a statement like that. As we look into some other wild moments that happened in March Madness, I want to look at the first round, and you see KJ Simpson from Colorado. He hit a bucket with 1.7 seconds on the clock to beat Florida 102-100. Just such a high-scoring game. And they moved on to the second round. This last moment here has to be one of the greatest Cinderella stories of all time. It is 11 seed NC State making the Final Four. And you might think that's great in itself. Let's move back to before March Madness even happened. They were the 10th seed in the ACC, not in the tournament, in the ACC, in their own conference, and had to win 5 games in 5 days, upsetting 4 teams to win the ACC tournament, punching their berth to March Madness, beating 6-seeded Texas Tech. beating 14-seeded Oakland, then beating 2-seeded Marquette, which is where a lot of people had them out, even if they had them moving on to the Sweet 16. And then the biggest shocker for them, beating 4-seeded Duke in the Elite Eight to move on to the Final Four. They would eventually lose to 1-seeded Purdue, but what a run for them. And as we stay on that topic of NC State, we move into the most electrifying players of March Madness, and that starts with DJ Burns Jr. I talked about him last episode. I said watch out for him, and he was a problem. He averaged over 18 points a game, and he's not much of a rebounding big. He is a passing big. If you double team him, he will find the open man. He averaged 3.5 assists a game in that tournament. You look at him, you see, only 18 points per game. There's got to be a bunch of other players that have had more than that. That was just his average. He had multiple games of 25 plus. He had 29 in that Elite Eight game against Duke to send him to the Final Four. So he was a problem all around, and as you could tell from the last episode, I've known it for a long time. Now, I know this is not an unfamiliar name. It is Zach Edey. He was named the National Player of the Year for the second year in a row, and he had an amazing March Madness run. They made it all the way to the national championship, but their run ended with an unfortunate loss to UConn. But he averaged 29.5 points per game, 14.5 rebounds per game, and they played 6 games. It's not like he got lucky one of them and his average just went up. They played 6 games and he averaged 29.5 points per game and almost 15 rebounds. That's ridiculous. And that was around his averages for the year. He averaged almost 25 in the regular season, but he showed it right here why he won National Player of the Year for the second year in a row. The final player on this list is Dalton Knecht from Tennessee. He's a transfer from Northern Colorado. He played lights out. He had 26 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game. He was a first-team All-American and a National Player of the Year candidate. And these are just crazy numbers. Like Zach Edey, he averaged 5 more points in this tournament a game than he usually does. Dalton Knecht averaged 7 more points a game than he usually does. So Dalton Knecht averaged over 5 more points a game than he usually does. So it's really, I love March Madness. I love when these players get to just play out of their minds and play like we've never seen them before. And then these players make a name for themselves that we've never heard before. So I get on here and I talk about sports. I love sports. And this is one of my favorite moments of the year. And I'm so glad that I got to get on here and talk about that. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, I'm your host, Will Blackmon. Now on to Mr. Judkins.
Before we get you on our next episode, please be sure to follow us at MJ_BearTalk on all social media. Now for your weekly update. April 20th is prom, and we're really excited about this. Please make sure you turn in all necessary materials to Miss Kelton before this date and as soon as possible. May 11th is graduation at 2 p.m. at Murphy Center on MTSU's campus. Graduation practice will be on May the 10th, starting at 8:30 in the Commons. Please be sure to arrive early so you know where to sit before we begin practice. If you're taking an AP class this semester, please check in with your AP teacher to see if there's review sessions. Some teachers are offering practice tests before testing week begins. Please make sure you check in with them, and please make sure you do know when your AP test is scheduled for, and don't be late. Mu Alpha Theta is offering tutoring in both science and math after school. Please see Ms. Wallace for more information or check the weekly calendar. FFA is hosting their annual plant sale. Please go check out the greenhouse after school or ask an FFA friend for more details. That's all we have for you this week. Stay classy, MJ, and have a very great day.